Hi and welcome to the fourth episode and the last episode for my Learn How to Knit for Beginners series, where we will talk about how to bind off our work. In the last video we were talking about how to actually knit, how to knit and purl, more precise, and how to maybe make a pattern or whatever you want to be making for your project. So in this video I will show you how to bind off. So when you have knitted your work, whatever it might be, maybe not a mitten or something, but maybe a, let's say, sweater, then you have to bind off in some way or another. So in this video, I will show you two different kind of bind offs, and there are multiple ones, but I will show you two. And I will also give you a bit of background how to bind off, or which bind off to use when you are doing different kinds of stitches. So for example, when you are knitting a rib stitch, then you might want to cast off in one way, and when you're doing like plain stockinette, you might want to bind off in another way, and I will show you that right now. So let's get started. So here in my hands I have a sample swatch that I made with 2 strands of 100% alpaca from Drops to see what gauge I have, which we have been talking about in the previous videos. And so with this one I have now done the parts around the swatch itself, or I don't know really what to call it, but the borders, which I have been doing in so-called garter stitch, which is basically knits on the right side and knits on the purl side, which makes this wavy fabric kind of. So what I want to be doing now is to bind off my work, obviously. That's why we are here. And so we are going to begin with a normal knit stitch. And I said before that we do different kinds of cast off depending on what kind of pattern you have been doing. So for this specific gauge swatch, I have been just doing garter stitch, which means I have been doing, as I said before, knits all of the sides. So on the purl side and on the knit side. So here you can see as well that it's the same, or it looks like it's only purls, but you can see the knits here. So on this specific thing that I have been working on, I will do a cast off with only knit stitches, which is the most basic one, and it doesn't really matter that much, but it could be good to adjust depending on what project you are working on. So for this one I'm just going to do a knit stitch, whatever, bind off. So what you want to be doing is to insert your right knitting needle in the loop as if to knit, and you will actually knit the first stitch like this. And now you want to be knitting the second stitch, but after that you do not want to knit the third stitch, but you want to take your knitted stitch, the first stitch that you knitted, take it like this and pull it over the second knitted stitch. And what that does is that it's securing the first stitch that you knitted, so it's secured by the second stitch, so it can't just fall off or anything. It's secured, it's binded off. So next you just knit the third, what do you call them, stitches? It's a different word in Swedish, it's maskor. And then you just do the same, you take the second stitch and you pull it over. I'm looking through the camera, I'm sorry. And you pull it over the third stitch, and you see it's creating this kind of chain here along the border of your work. So you keep going, you knit, and you pull over like that. So you just keep going like this until you have been knitting all the stitches or binding off all the stitches, and I will show you what to do when you reach the end. So as you can see now, I just have one more stitch to knit and bind off, or two actually, because this one is also going to be binded off, or this one rather. So what you want to do now is that you do as you have been doing before. You knit the last stitch and you pull the second last stitch over it. So what you're left with is this single stitch that you have on your right knitting needle. So before I have been just pulling out this thread, because as you can see the thread is going through the loop in here, so it would be secure. But what I like to do is, because this is a stitch itself, you want to knit it. So what I like to do with this last stitch is to actually kind of crochet it. So you take the yarn like you usually do when you knit, and then you just pull it through like that, and then you have been creating a chain here, which is your last stitch, and then just pull it like that, and voila, you have your stitch border, or you have your bind off border, which looks like a chain, as I said before, like knit stitches kind of. So this is the most easy way, the simplest way, if you will, to bind off like that. So this could potentially be quite not stretchy. I don't know what the opposite word is to stretchy, but so that's an issue you might be having if you want your border to be loose. Because if you look at this border, it's very loose because this is my cast on edge. This is my bind off edge, which is not very stretchy. So there are a few things to do to fix this. Either you cast off with bigger needles. So this is number 5, which is recommended through with the gauge that I have. So 2 strands of 100% alpaca drops yarn is supposed to be knitted with 5mm needles. But you could maybe use 6mm needles or bigger. It depends on how not stretchy the fabric gets at the border here when you are finished. But you could also, it says wrap, in some patterns it says you could wrap around before you bind off. So I've never done that, so I don't really know how it works, but I think it's just that when you are binding off, instead of knitting the second stitch and just pull it over the other stitch that you just knitted, you do like a you wrap the yarn around. So I think that creates a bit more yarn like here in between, so it makes it more stretchy, but I'm not really sure. But now I will show you a second method of binding off. So for this cast off, what you want to do is to, as you did before, you want to knit the first stitch, but instead of knitting the other stitch and then pull it over the second stitch, you want to instead put the stitch back that you have just been knitting, and then you want to knit them both through the back loop. And this might be a bit over course. I don't think that's the correct word, but we say that in Swedish. It might be a bit too advanced, but you want to knit the first stitch, and when you have been knitting that stitch, you want to insert your needle purlwise, as if you were to purl the stitch, but you want to have the yarn in the back, and you want to insert it in the back loop of both of the stitches, and then you knit it, and this is called knitting in the back loop. So you want to just knit. So this doesn't really involve any what am I supposed to say? Any throwing over stitches over other stitches. I don't remember what I used, but pulling over stitches. This is just a way to knit all along, but you do it in a bit more advanced way, if you will. So you just do it all the way, and it also creates this kind of chain along the edge. So actually this is I want to say that this is almost the exact same, because on here I didn't do it all the way. So in here you have the first cast on or cast off that I showed you, and here you have the second one. So it looks pretty much the same. It's kind of hard to see with this gray color and fussy yarn, but it looks basically the same. But I would argue, at least for me, that this cast off makes it a bit less stretchy than the first one. So if you have problems with casting off too tightly, I would not maybe recommend this second method that I am showing you now, but I would use the third or the first one, or I would do another type of cast off that is a bit less tight. So there are ways to do it much more loose if you want to have it loose, but you tend to, oh my goodness, you tend to knit it too tight when you are a beginner. And I also like to do my borders quite tight. So yeah, I don't know. As you can see, there is no stretch here, basically, and this is basically the same, so they're not really different from one another. But this is the second way to bind off. So now you have two ways of binding off, and you choose which one you like the most, which one you think is the most simple or good looking way. But they all look the same, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, there you go, two different kinds of bind offs. So now that you know how to bind off your work, you now have everything you need in order to become a knitter. You know the basics of knitting, and you will be able to progress further, which you of course want to do. And maybe I will be the provider of the next step. Who knows? Maybe a second series if you are okay with that, or if I want to make a second series, but it all depends if I have some viewers. And I have been getting a few more viewers along the series, so I hope to see that continuing. And thank you all for liking my videos, for subscribing to my channel. It makes me so happy to see that people actually subscribe to my channel, and not only my friends, because I see that I get new viewers which are new to this channel, and that makes me so happy to see. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. So with all of that being said, I wish you a good day, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.